Hello, everyone. I'm Kamraun.
And I'm Billy. Welcome to the HorseFrog podcast, home of your two favorite professional digressors.
Today, we will be discussing Book 7, Chapter 22 of Gardens of the Moon, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 1 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the book set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it's most definitely not intended to be a replacement to reading the books. Know that Kamraun and I know this series is the best fantasy story ever written, and we're approaching this from a purely fanboy point of view, so that we will not be providing literary critique, at least not about the series. just pure love, maybe other series probably. But
yeah, if the modern Star Wars topic comes up, you might get a little bit of critique.
Might get some blowback here.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those that have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
Now, a quick warning, today's episode better contain copious amounts of blood, death, destruction, and loads of graphic violence, or I may be extremely disappointed, especially as we approach the end of this magnificent book, and is therefore probably not recommended for children.
Our show is listener supported. If you would like to support us, we would really appreciate it. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we are posting ad-free episodes on Patreon.
And also, we would really like to hear from you, so please send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com.
Before we get into the episode today, we have a couple of additions. Last week, there was a question on whether Kruppa was in the Torud Cabal. He is not.
I can't remember what led me to believe that. I guess just because of the fact he runs around with Baruch and Mammoth, and also just kind of is so aware. He's so aware of everything going on. I just kind of assumed he was part of the Cabal.
Mm-hmm. He's also a mage.
Yes. And that's what's so funny about his magery. I don't know if we're ever satisfied with an answer to what kind of mage, how strong of one he actually is, or whether he is one at all.
I think it's fairly clear he is using some warrens of some type. Yes. Baruch did tell him to have it ready one time, right?
Yeah, I did mention have your warren ready, so that's true.
Now, there was also a comment left by Livia the Malazan Potato Noob on YouTube. Right on. She noted that Erikson had said in an interview that Circle Breaker is a self-insert.
Does that mean that Circle Breaker is the Erikson character?
Yes, it represents himself.
Okay. I hadn't heard it put like that, I guess, self-insert. That's why I asked that question. That's what I assumed it meant, but I had to verify and clarify. Thanks, Livia. We appreciate that.
Yes, always appreciate the engagement. She's left some really good comments over several episodes.
Awesome.
We have an action-packed chapter ahead of us today. I'll tell you what.
Yes.
You've been alluding to this for weeks now.
Weeks.
It feels like months.
Yes, a month. It's
but we're here.
That's true. Yes. Well, we're getting close.
Yes. Chapter 22, Part 1. We are taken to the battle between Raced and the 5 dragons. Raced had driven back 2 of the black dragons from the battle. The other 2 circled high overhead. Solana flew out of sight beyond a hill. Raced knew she was hurting and felt the power of her life force bleeding away. He said, "And now she will die." Was that a good approximation of the Emperor?
I love it. Yes. Yeah.
The Emperor being Emperor Palpatine.
Yes. This is why did you say you had not seen the last? Did you see the last the Star Wars sequel?
Rise of Skywalker, I've not seen. No.
Yes. Now, I've not hated this trilogy as bad as other people have. There was some imagery in that stuff that had some Erikson. I've mentioned that before. I've alluded to that. Had some very Erikson-esque to me. And of course, it could be that I was reading the book, and maybe I just read Erikson-esque into everything when I'm reading or when I'm watching great or cool fantasy or strange science fiction stuff. It's like I'm wondering, I wonder if this would look like that. That looks really cool. That's kind of what I think that looks like.
Mm-hmm.
There is some First Throne imagery.
Okay.
In my mind, for some reason, I don't know why it hits me right there, but it just does. And it's like that's all I can ever think about. And this is something in that Rise of the Skywalker, and that alone made the whole movie worthwhile for some reason. I'm like, dude, it's just pretty cool.
Okay, if we ever renew our Disney Plus subscription, I will try to get some time to get that in there.
Maybe there's so much to watch, please.
Not to belabor the point on the Star Wars stuff, but it was really The Last Jedi that threw me off. And it was particularly disappointing because I do like Rian Johnson as a director. I like virtually all of his other movies. It's just
Right.
that one that really disappointed me.
And see, I'm in the opposite. It made me watch. That was the first one of the new trilogy I saw.
Mm.
I saw that first. Was like, this is okay. I'll go back and watch The Force Awakens, and I really kind of dug it. I like that they kind of went back to nobodies, and I kind of dig that.
Okay.
It's more relatable. It's way more relatable when it's a bunch of nobodies, isn't it? That's the idea. I think that's the idea.
I don't know. I guess it's the nobodies they chose that didn't sit well with me necessarily.
Oh, okay. I didn't have a problem.
Maybe that's what it was.
Okay,
I think Finn was underused, and the way that they
Yes.
did him dirty in The Last Jedi, in my opinion.
Yes.
So
they did.
in favor
Yeah, they
of
did. I'm not gonna deny
Rose
that. It's
Tico. Let's move on.
Okay, move along. Sorry. Wow, that was a huge digression. Sorry. We're professionals, folks. It's okay. We're moving along.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really tense moment too. Raced
I'm so sorry.
is approaching Silana. Raced's flesh had been torn away by the virulent power of the dragons. His brittle, yellowed bones were splintered, crushed, and shattered. All that held him together and moving was his Amtos Phylac Warren. Once he acquired the finest, he would remake his body. One last ridge of hills remained before the city's walls would be visible. The battle had laid waste to the hills, incinerating everything in the deadly clash of warrens. Raced had listened to the dragons' cries of pain. He'd laughed and flung dense clouds of earth and stone skyward to blind them. He ignited the air in the path of their flight. He filled clouds with fire. He exulted in being alive again. When I think of Amtos Phylac, I associate it with ice, and this is due to the Jaghut's habit of raising glaciers around them to isolate themselves. And we saw that the Jaghut Barrow was under over a mile of ice within the Warren, as an example.
Right.
When it said that Raced ignited the air and filled clouds with fire, this seems incongruent to me.
Right. And I kind of get that. I'm not sure about if the particular brand of magic that you use eliminates the ability to access other powers. Not saying Warrens, mind you, but like these elders in particular are the because he could Raced was mentioned enslaving folks, so there's some kind of. And I don't know if that's just necessarily forcibly or by will, by mind, and I think it's mind control. So I maybe it's not just cold, but it's primal. Just cold, fire, dark, maybe, or something like that. It's just kind of very crude access to some other stuff that's very powerful.
Okay.
I guess what I'm saying is that maybe he has access to other elemental abilities within his own warren.
Do you think it's something like with Hairlock, where he started to explore a little bit outside of his own warren?
That could be it. So maybe it is looking at other warrens. But I'm never really sure. I have my basic understanding of things. This is where I get kind of confused on the Warren system. I know that they're all Warrens or different paths of certain kinds of magic, but is it saying that it's necessarily limited to that? These one things that are, am I making myself clear?
Yes, I think in Gardens of the Moon, it's particularly muddy waters with this. And as the books progress, increasingly, I feel that he decided the Warrens were more limited based off of the aspect that the user had. So if someone was associated with a fire type Warren, they would generally have those types of powers accessible to them.
Right.
This book, it feels like that decision hadn't been made yet, and maybe it was a little bit more rough around the edges.
Well, there's that, but I think my biggest question is do the elders, are they different? Do they, because they're more raw and they're closer to the source? Just because does that make sense? Since everything seems to blend, the Warrens that we have seen here are more refined from the more raw and the more chaotic. So does this mean it's sorcery in general has this flavor, but I can do fire, like I said, fire, air, fire, a little bit of earth, wind, fire, the basics.
Can you think of any examples of a bonecaster using anything outside of fire? Because that would be the alternative, right? The Talon Warren is an elder Warren associated with fire, and
With
the
fire.
Bonecasters wielded Talon. If your theory...
But I always think of them fellas, yeah, you're right, because they're always cold. But I always felt like the Bonecaster stuff was more cold related. I don't know why I got that vibe. It's just been so long. It's been a while since I've done my last read, so I've lost a lot.
Okay. We'll have to come
I've
back to
lost a
it
lot of that
when
stuff.
we start seeing some of that. But yeah, let's look for clues as we read.
Okay.
Or if anybody
Copy
can
that.
think of any, they can send them to us at contact
Yes.
at horsefrogproductions.com, where there's examples of the Elder Warrens intermixing their powers when people are wielding them. Because I can't think of any off the top of my head outside of this book.
Yeah.
There might be, though.
I mean, we do have of course, something where they're accessing other warrants coming up. But,
well, yeah, that's a little bit different, though.
That's different, though.
They talk about Quick Ben weaving different things together. He has access to multiple warrants. That's specifically mentioned. But with Raced in particular, they keep talking about his Amtos Philak warrant,
They do. Yes.
It doesn't seem like he's accessing other stuff. We'll just need to look for other evidence.
Put a pin in that. Yeah.
Yeah. Add it to the list.
Add it to the list.
Add it to your list of questions for Steven Erikson whenever you get to interview him.
Yeah. Copy. No pressure there. Okay.
Race continued to devastate the land around him as he walked. With a single jerk of his head, he had shattered a stone bridge spanning a river. There had been a guardhouse there, and soldiers with iron weapons, odd creatures taller than Imass. He sensed that they could be easily enslaved, but killed them to prevent distraction. He'd met another man, similarly clad and riding a horse. He killed them both, irritated at their intrusion.
That's kind of what I'm talking about, the enslaved. They can be easily enslaved. Is he talking about by force or by force of his magic? Is it mind control?
That mind control stuff was a little bit unclear to me as well. How is the Jaghut Tyrant able to mind control people?
Is that like a mutation? Like they don't like to be around each other because but when this one wanted to be around them and to enslave them, and then everybody else.
I don't know of any other examples of Jaghut doing this, though.
Yeah, I don't either. And they talk about it like it's happened, but because we don't have much knowledge of the Jags. What little we know is still what little we know. Even after having read this series, there's not a whole lot known, is there?
Not particularly, no. You get little tidbits dripped here and there.
Yes, dripped.
It's a drip feed. Yes.
Yes.
Now, this bridge that was destroyed, that was the Catlin Bridge, as mentioned several times before when Crocus and Apsalar crossed, as well as when Perrin and Call crossed. Also, do you think this rider that was killed with his horse, was that the one that Orr had sent to speak with the Malazans?
That's a really great question. And due to him being mentioned here, it probably is.
Poor guy.
Right? Poor fella.
Wreathed in the crackling fire of his sorcery, Race climbed the side of the hill behind which Solana had disappeared. He anticipated another ambush and gathered his power. He reached the crest unmolested and wondered if she had fled. He looked to the sky and saw the two black dragons remained, with a great raven between them, and that raven would be Krone. As Race crossed the hill's summit, he stopped when the valley beyond came into view, for Solana waited there. He could see her red pebbled skin streaked with black, wet burns across her heaving chest. Wings folded, she watched him from her position at the base of the valley. Race laughed harshly. Here she would die. The far side of the valley was a low ridge, and beyond he saw the city that held his finest glowing in the darkness. Race paused at seeing it. Even the great Jaghut cities of the early times were dwarfed by comparison. He wondered at the strange blue and green light emanating from the city. He yelled, "Solana, Alaint, I give you your life. Flee now, Solana. I show mercy but once. Hear me, Alaint." She did not move, nor did she reply. I thought it was interesting that he is now talking about mercy when right when he was coming over the hill, he's like, "Now she will die." That's a pretty quick turnaround.
Yeah. Well, Race appears to be pretty mercurial. He's been asleep for Lord knows how long. Is it thousands or tens of thousands of years or hundreds of thousands of years? This guy's
probably
been trapped
closer
here?
to the latter. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking, hundreds.
Race continued on toward her, surprised to find her warren gone, and wondered if she had surrendered. He laughed a second time. As he neared, the sky above him changed, filling with a sourceless, mercurial glow. That's 2 times in as many sentences we've heard that word.
Well, I said mercurial myself. I said his
Yeah.
attitude
No,
is
that's what I'm saying.
mercurial.
It's just,
So
you don't hear that word very often. So nice.
no.
The city vanished, replaced by wind-whipped mud flats. The distant, jagged line of mountains loomed massive, uncarved by rivers of ice, bright and savage with youth. Raced's steps slowed. He recognized this as an elder vision from before even the Jag Hut and wondered, who has lured me here? He heard someone say, oh my, oh my. His gaze snapped down to find a mortal standing before him. Raced raised an eyebrow as he saw the man's peculiar clothing. The coat was tattered and faded red with large food-stained cuffs. His baggy, shimmering pantaloons were dyed an astonishing pink, and his broad black leather boots covered his small feet. I never knew he had pink pants before.
Yeah, I didn't either. Oh man, I love this guy.
The man withdrew a cloth and patted the sweat from his brow. He wheezed, Dear sir, you've not aged well at all. Race said, There is Imass within you. Even the language you speak echoes their guttural throats. Have you come forth to grovel at my feet? Are you my first acolyte, then, eager for my rewards? The man said, Alas, you are mistaken, sir. Kruppa, this humble, weak mortal who stands before you, bows to no man, be he Jaghut or god. Such are the nuances of this new age that you are felled by indifference, made insignificant in your mighty struggles by lowly Kruppa, in whose dream you have ignobly stumbled. Kruppa stands before you so that you may gaze upon his benign countenance in the last moments before your demise. Magnanimous of Kruppa, all things considered. Kruppa bows to no man, Jaghut or god. That's impressive given how intimidating some of these individuals can be. And it really shows you the level of confidence he has as an individual. This is in stark contrast to the appearance he cultivates.
Oh, I know it. And I absolutely love this scene. Another interesting fact, this, I'm assuming, is going to be at the same time that he is sleeping at the fete, wouldn't it?
100%.
I love that little loop there. That's not a loop, but the fact is like, oh yeah, that while he is sleeping at the party when Circle Breaker's leaving.
Yes.
You know, he's looking at him and this is what's going on. Holding a Jag Hunt tyrant in his mind. That's awesome.
Yeah, he had to eat all those pastries to give enough energy for this dream. Probably.
Yeah. And all this sweat.
Got to get those electrolytes in.
Yeah.
Race laughed and said, I have walked in the dreams of mortals before. You believe you are the master here, but you are mistaken. His hand shot out and virulent power erupted from it. The sorcery engulfed Kruppa, then faded, leaving not even a remnant of the man. Race heard a voice to his left. Rude, Kruppa proclaims. Disappointing, this precipitateness. Race turned to look at him and said, What game is this? Kruppa smiled and said, Why, Kruppa's game, of course. Race heard a sound behind him, but too late. He spun as a massive flint sword crunched through his left shoulder. It tore through his ribs, then sliced through his sternum and spine. The blow dragged Race down and to one side. He sprawled, pieces of his body striking the ground around him. He stared up at the Talan mass. Kruppa moved to stand over Race, and the tyrant met the mortal man's watery eyes. Kruppa said, He is clanless, of course, unbound and beyond binding, yet the ancient call commands him still, to his dismay. Imagine his surprise at being found out. Onos Tulan, sword of the First Empire, is once more called upon by the blood that once warmed his limbs, his heart, his life of so very long ago. Tool said, You have strange dreams, mortal. Kruppa said, Kruppa possesses many surprises, even unto himself. Tool went on, I sense a bonecaster's hand in this summoning. Kruppa said, Indeed, Pran Kol of Kig Aven's clan of the Kron Talan Imas. I believe he called himself. This is the same realm where Kruppa went to transfer Tattersail's soul to the new body.
Yes, his dream world.
His dream world, yeah. I have to think that he has multiple worlds he could have in his dream. This isn't the only one.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's what makes him interesting, is he's very powerful. He's more powerful than we realize. Well, this scene alone shows it.
Right. Race stood up and used his sorcery to hold his body's shattered parts in place. He hissed, No Talanai mask can withstand me. Kruppa said, "A dubious claim. Even so, he is joined in this endeavor." Raist saw a black-shrouded figure emerge from a nearby stream bed, and he cocked his head as the apparition approached. Raist said, "You remind me of Hood. Is the Death Wanderer still alive? But no, I sense nothing from you. You do not exist." The figure replied, "Perhaps. If so, then neither do you. We are both of the past, Jaghut." The figure halted 15 feet away from Raist and swung his hooded head in Solana's direction. He said, "Her master awaits your arrival, Jaghut, but he waits in vain, and for this you should thank us. He would deliver a kind of death from which there is no escape, even by such a creature as you. Here within a mortal's dream, we bring an end to your existence." So we have confirmation that Kruppa is a mortal here.
Yes.
We were wondering if he was an ascendant, and
Yeah.
Kroll himself says, "Here within a mortal's dream."
Yep, just a mortal. He's just, him and some other people are just next level, dude. Kruppa appears the fool, but all that the Torod Cabal is a pretty powerful group, but Kruppa appears to be the fool, but he is not.
Yeah, he's really critical to saving the city here. Without him,
Yes,
this whole
he is.
thing would have not happened.
Yeah.
Race grunted, "In this age, there are none who can defeat me." The figure laughed and said, "You are a fool, Raced. In this age, even a mortal can kill you. The tide of enslavement has reversed itself. It is now we gods who are the slaves, and the mortals our masters, though they know it not." This is a critical concept that we've mentioned before. In this universe, the gods are only as powerful as the number of worshippers they have. The gods can't simply do whatever they want, though. It's a two-way relationship. The god is bound to the desires of their worshippers.
Now, is that true of all? I mean, like people like Raced, maybe he was worshipped. I think he may have been worshipped by some IMAS at some point, but it never talks about him being anything other than just a Jaghut.
Well, his power was we talked about this a couple episodes ago, right? Where we differentiated between the gods that are worshipped versus those that had power before being worshipped. Where the power comes from them themselves versus
Yes.
gaining power through being worshipped by somebody.
Yeah. Being born out of worship versus being the creators of the power that is worshipped, I guess.
Yeah, because later we'll see some examples. I'm not going to say specifically which ones, but where there's a certain position that can be taken by a number of different individuals, and some of them fall from favor in favor of other ones. People start worshiping one over the other, and then they lose their position as the deity of that aspect or something like that. That's the most ambiguous way I can explain it without spoiling anything.
Well, it's well done. Well said.
Thank you.
I agree.
Yeah. Race said, "You are a god then? You are a child to me, if so." The figure said, "I was once a god, worshipped as Krull, and my aspect was the obelisk. I'm the maker of paths. Do you find significance in that ancient title?" And this helps provide a little more context around the readings from the deck of dragons in the book. Obelisk came into the pattern a number of times, and it represented Krull when it did.
Right. Okay. That does clear that up a lot.
Yeah, because I was confused. I was like, who is Obelisk?
Yeah, I kind of always thought Obelisk for some reason was like Empire or something like that. But they're the claw and the orb.
I thought it was Orb.
It is Orb.
Yeah. And then Obelisk, I knew it was neutral, but I didn't know who it was representing.
Who it was, yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
In response to Krull's statement, Race took a step back, raising his hands. He said, "Impossible. You passed into the realms of chaos, returned to the place of your birth. You are among us no more." Krull said, "As I said, things have changed. You have a choice, Raced. Ono's Tulan can destroy you. You have no understanding of what his title of sword signifies. He is without equal in this world. You can fall ignobly beneath the blade of an IMAS, or you can accompany me, for in one thing we are the same, you and I. Our time has passed, and the gates of chaos await us. What choice do you make?" Race said, "I make neither, Eldering One." With a soft, hollow laugh, Race's battered, withered body collapsed. Krull cocked his head and said, "He's found another body." Kruppa pulled out his handkerchief and said, "Oh my, that's not good."
Nope, that is not.
Now, when Race says, "I make neither," this reminds me of a funny story in regards to my kids, if you want to hear it.
All right.
All
Yeah,
right.
bring it.
There is a role-playing game that's, I don't want to say dumbed down, but a simplified version that you can play with your kids of Dungeons and Dragons.
Okay.
It's called Hero Kids. And
Okay.
I was trying to get my kids interested in it. And 3 of my children had selected the class that they wanted to play.
Okay.
One of my children, I'm not going to say which one, he has, I'll say it's a he. There's 3 boys, so you can pick from that number. He has a penchant for the dramatic, and he was not interested in picking a character. So we're all sitting in the living room, we're talking about it, and I ask him, have you picked your character yet? And he was upset about something. He gets in the middle of the room. He has a chair. He stands up on it. He unrolls a piece of paper, and on it is written nothing. And he says, I choose nothing. and
it's awesome,
I
dude.
did
I'm
not
sorry.
know how to respond to this situation because it was too funny, man. Just, it's like the town crier.
Right.
You know?
I choose nothing.
Oh, man. He had it written on a piece of paper. It was rolled up. He unrolled it. Oh, God. It's so funny. I forgot about that.
Oh, my good gracious. I love that. I was imagining when you said he rolled it up, I thought he's going to sit there and like use it like a megaphone and,
No,
and go like,
it was
I
better.
choose nothing. Yeah, that's much better. You know, that's much better.
He was prepared.
Reading it like the crier. Yeah. The page or the crier is really nicely.
Mm-hmm.
All he needed was the bell.
By the order of the king, I pronounce.
I choose nothing.
All right, moving along. We are taken to Kalam and Perrin, who are in the garden at Simtal's estate. Kalam gestured sharply, and Perrin ducked down. Perrin's mouth was dry. There was something very wrong with this garden. The garden's air itself rubbed his senses raw, and he thought he could see the darkness pulse. The smell of decay had thickened to a stench. Kalam reached for his knives. Perrin tensed, unable to see anything beyond the assassin. There were too many trees and not enough light. Kalam gestured that Perrin should stay put, then slipped into the shadows to their right. Crouching low, Perrin moved forward to where the assassin had been standing. There looked to be a glade, or clearing, just ahead. He couldn't be certain, however, nor could he see anything amiss. Yet his feeling of wrongness now ached in his skull. He took another step. Something occupied the glade's center, blockish, like a dressed stone or an altar, and before it stood a small woman with her back to Perrin. One moment she stood alone, the next Kalam rose behind her, his knives in his hands. He drew back his arms. The woman moved in a blur, one elbow driving backward into Kalam's stomach. She twisted round and drove her knee into his crotch. A shout burst from Kalam as he reeled back a step, then fell to the ground with a heavy thump. Even as strong as he is, the classic weak spot for men is just as effective on him.
Yes. You'd think assassins would wear a cup, wouldn't they?
Maybe.
But that would be the first spot I'd go for. But I think Krav Maga, pardon me, the Israeli martial arts. Is it a martial art? If it's from the, I don't know how you look. Anyhow, the martial arts known as Krav Maga. It's 1,000 ways to kick, punch, grab a guy in the nuts to win a fight is apparently what that's all about. So
sounds about right. There's probably some eye gouging and jamming things in people's ears too and stuff. But I think a lot of it is crotch damage related.
Yeah, crotch related. Yes. Well, it works. I mean, hey.
Yeah.
It works. It's the classic for a reason.
Perrin used it on one of those Reeve.
Yeah, he did. Right, he played some Rochambeau with that fella.
I kick you square in the nuts. Perrin dashed into the clearing, sword in hand. The woman saw him and yelped in surprise. No, please. Her girlish voice stopped Perrin. Kalam sat up and groaned, then said, Damn it, sorry, wasn't expecting you. We figured you were dead, girl. Apsalar eyed Perrin warily as he approached cautiously. She asked Kalam, I should know you, shouldn't I? As Perrin came closer, she raised a frightened hand between them and stepped back. I killed you, she moaned and fell to her knees. She said, Your blood was on my hands. I remember it. Rage flared in Perrin. He raised his sword and moved to stand over her. Kalam hissed, Wait, Captain, something's not right here. Kalam climbed to his feet with great difficulty, then prepared to sit down on the stone block. Apsalar gasped, "Don't! Can't you feel it?" Perrin growled, "I can." He lowered his weapon, then said, "Don't touch that thing, Corporal." Kalam stepped away and muttered, "Thought it was just me." Apsalar said, "It's not stone at all. It's wood." She rose and faced Kalam, then said, "And it's growing." A suspicion came to Perrin, and he asked, "Girl, do you remember me? Do you know who I am?" She frowned at him, then shook her head. She said, "I know Kalam. He's an old friend, I think." Kalam choked on something, then coughed loudly, shaking his head. That's got to be quite the shock given his experience with Sari in the past, wouldn't you say?
Well, yes, absolutely. But I have a question about this. So, is that being a friend? Is that a memory from Cotillion?
That is a very good question.
Because I don't know if she would have I mean, it's the way that Sari appeared to look at people. I wouldn't have thought that she would have looked at any of them as friends. But I think she did something that she was doing. I don't know. I've always been curious about that. Was he doing that to look out for them in a way?
It's such a good question because I never thought about it like that. I thought it was just the innocence of the girl assuming because she remembered him that they were friends.
Well, yeah, that could be that too. It could be that.
Well, that's the level I always understood it as. But when you ask that question like that I never considered that it could be a latent memory left by Cotillion from before when Kalam was in the claw.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
I wasn't even going that far. I was
Oh,
just
okay.
wow, that's nice. I was just thinking more about the fact that the bridge burners. That was the Emperor's. He loved that group, didn't he? That was his favorite army, wasn't it?
He did. Yes. They were his chosen ones, his elites.
Yeah. So if they're his chosen, yes. So there's something about them that I could understand, and it could be from Claw and or slash just bridge burner status of the Emperor slash Cotillion's knowledge of these fellows. They work for them, number one and number two. So,
well, actually, I take it back. It couldn't have been Cotillion having a good relationship with the Claw because he did not form the Claw. Lassine formed the Claw after she took over.
formed the Claw.
Yes.
He was the Claw. Sorry. I apologize for that spoiler. We'll back it up. Enough. I'll shut up. Sorry. Oh.
Apsalar pointed at the wooden block and said, "See, it's growing again." Both men looked. A haze blurred the block's edges, swelling and shifting, then vanished. It was clear that the thing was now bigger. Apsalar added, "It has roots." For those of you that may not have realized what this thing is, it's the result of Lorne planting the finest, which was an acorn. Perrin shook himself, then said, "Corporal, remain here with the girl. I won't be long." He sheathed his sword and left the glade. After a moment, he came to the edge of the garden and looked out on a terrace crowded with guests. A low-walled fountain rose from the paving stones to his left, encircled by marble pillars spaced about a yard apart. Perrin saw that Whiskey Jack and the squad had arrayed themselves in a rough line a dozen feet from the garden's edge, facing the terrace. They looked tense. Perrin found a dead branch and snapped it in half. At the sound, all 6 men turned. Perrin pointed at Whiskey Jack and Mallet, then stepped back between the trees. Whiskey Jack whispered something to Quick Ben. Then he collected Mallet and they came over. Perrin pulled Whiskey Jack close and said, "Kalam's found Sari, and something else besides. The girl's not all there, Sergeant, and I don't think it's an act. One minute she remembers killing me, the next she doesn't. And she's got it in her head right now that Kalam's an old friend." Mallet grunted. Whiskey Jack glanced back to the party, then asked, "So what's this something else?" Perrin said, "I'm not sure, but it's ugly." Whiskey Jack sighed. "All right. Go with the captain, Mallet. Take a look at Sari." He asked Perrin, "Any contact from the Assassin's Guild yet?" Perrin said no. Whiskey Jack said, "Then we move soon. We let Fiddler and Hedge loose. Bring Kalam when you come back, Mallet. We need to talk." "Loose the hounds."
Loose the hounds. Oh, my word.
Ralik's path was unobstructed as he moved across the central chamber toward the front doors. Attendees of the fete turned to him, and conversations fell away, rising again as he passed. Ralik felt a bone-deep weariness, more than could be accounted for by the blood lost to a wound already healed. The malaise gripping him was emotional. This is similar to Murillo. They are experiencing the emotional toll of the culmination of their plan. He had said this was going to be his last act of humanity.
Think about the slog that they've gone through to get through this path that they've laid out. I'm sure it's more weariness and maybe a little depression over finishing something that's taken them, man, maybe how long do you think they've been planning this?
Years.
Years? That's what I'm thinking too. I knew it wasn't months because I think the story's taken how long do you think this story has taken beside the kind of time jumps up front? Battle of Pale to here, what about 2-3 months in total?
No, I don't think it's been that
Not
long
even?
in the city, because I want to say after we started with Crocus on the rooftops, right? That's how
Yeah.
this section started. Maybe 3-4 weeks, something like that.
It's not long. I know it's not particularly long, after the time jumps, but I know that particularly this last few chapters have just been tonight. Have just been this one night.
Right.
But I was just kind of curious.
Relic paused at seeing Kruppa as he rose from a chair, his mask dangling from one plump hand. Kruppa's face was sheathed in sweat, and there was fear in his eyes. Relic said, "You've a right to be terrified. If I'd known you'd be here..." Kruppa snapped, "Silence! Kruppa must think." Relic scowled but said nothing. He'd never before seen Kruppa without his usual affable facade, and the sight of him so distraught made Relic uneasy.
Wow.
On this point, Kruppa has always been in a pretty decent mood in all the scenes we've witnessed thus far.
Yeah.
Excepting when he is starving to death or had to exert any amount of physical effort.
That's very... Oh my goodness, that's very, very true. And but man, that is that would be unsettling because they're only used to him being kind of a pain in the butt,
or in kind of a good mood.
But there's always been this, like, we know he kind of seems to be over them,
right?
And you can tell there is some of that, but it's like, yeah, to have him actually and to have Rallick be like, whoa, absolutely, yes, boss, kind of yes, sir, I'll shut up, It's kind of wild, it's like, wow, okay.
In a strange voice, Kruppa said, "Be on your way, friend. Your destiny awaits you. More, it seems this new world is well prepared for one such as Race, no matter what flesh he wears." Rallick's scowl deepened. Kruppa sounded drunk. Rallick sighed, then turned away, his mind returning once again to what had been achieved this night. He continued on his way and left Kruppa behind. He thought, what now? So much had gone into reaching this moment. The sharp focus of his thoughts seemed dulled now by success. Rallick's obsession to right the wrong had been, in a sense, no more than the assassin assuming the role Call himself should have taken. He'd played the instrument of Call's will, relying on a faith that the man's own will would return, and if it didn't, his scowl deepened. Rallick crushed that question before it could lead his thoughts in search of an answer. As Baruch had said, the time had come to go home. This is an important point. Change must come from within. Call has been sedating himself for a long time, and it's a lot to ask for him to suddenly wake up on his own. This was a hole in Rallick and Murillo's plan.
Oh, I know. I feel like they've left Cole out of the plan completely while they were planning the plan that they had for Cole. They've left him out of the plan.
Yeah, they didn't get his input.
Yeah, it's like, we'll just prop him up in there and he'll be all right.
Right.
Once we get him.
Fortunately, Call had the encounter with Perrin, which gave him exactly the wake-up call he needed. Lacking that, I fear he would not step up to become the man he should be.
I agree. Absolutely. Perrin has been quite a sobering character for me this run through. He's been a lot, and I'll mention it again later on, but Perrin has been a character I've truly grown to love in this read-through.
Yeah.
He's raised up. He's come up higher than where he used to be on my list.
He's gone up a tier. Maybe he was A tier before, and now he's S tier.
I think he's gone up a couple
tiers. Are you familiar with tier lists?
I am not.
Okay, so it's kind of like S, A, B, C, D. They do this in video games a lot, where you have your best characters or godlike characters are S tier, and then sometimes you'll say like S plus. I don't know. It was a gamer joke. I'll leave it at that.
I missed it.
It's okay.
I'm sorry.
I'll give you an example
I'm an
later.
older gamer.
No, it's okay. Yeah, this is generally kind of a new concept in terms of now that, like, if you think back to fighting games, you're familiar with games like Street Fighter 2, right, in the arcade, because you were around the age when, teenager or like early 20s when that stuff came out. They didn't have the internet to compare how strong each character was. But now with a game like that, they have tier lists where the pros will rate where they think the characters lie in relation to each other. And they'll have ones that are just unstoppable as S tier. And then below that, it goes A, B, C, D. That's kind of the concept behind it.
Okay. Cool. Thanks. I appreciate
If
that.
anybody wants a Malazan tier list, throw up character.
Well, dude,
That'd be a big list. Oh my god.
oh my word. I would leave that to some. I would hope that there is a wonderful fan out there that would love to do that. I don't think I have the patience to do something like that, but hey,
I could do that.
I,
Yeah. We'll have to think about that. Maybe put it on our
yeah,
webpage or something like that.
there you go.
As Rallick passed, a silver-masked woman touched his arm. Startled by the contact, he turned to look at her. Long brown hair surrounded the featureless mask, its eye-hole slits revealing nothing of what lay behind it. The woman stepped close and quietly said, "I've been curious for some time. However, I see now I should have observed you personally, Rallick Nom. Ocelot's death could have been avoided." Rallick's gaze darkened. Vorkin. Her head tilted in a fraction of a nod. Finally, Vorkin has appeared. I'm so excited. I was like, yes. Yeah. I didn't realize how much I liked her until this read through.
Oh, I know. There's a lot of folks like that, but someone like Vorkin, where there's a couple of movies that I can name where it's one in particular is The Third Man with Orson Welles, where you talk about a guy for the first half of the movie and you never see him.
Mm-hmm.
And he finally shows up, kind of not even in the first half. It's like the last third of the movie, the guy shows up. And you're like, you've been thinking, and that's her. It's like she just shows up, like, yes, I'm really excited. It's like, I'm like you, I'm really excited too. So
Rallick snapped. Ocelot was a fool. If Orr's contract was sanctioned by the guild, I await punishment. Vorkin did not reply. Rallick waited calmly. She said, "You're a man of few words, Rallick Nom." His answer was silenced. It's incredible. He's holding his frame here, and a lesser man would have crumbled and began babbling excuses out of discomfort. Very impressive given how powerful he knows she is.
Yeah, he's inscrutable as the Sphinx. Rallick is.
Yes.
Love it. You can't be wrong if you're quiet.
Yeah.
Usually, I say that maybe you can, but I'm unaware of ways that if you just hush, sometimes for the most part, just like this.
It is a useful tactic.
Yes.
Vorkin laughed softly. You say you await punishment, as if already resigned to your own death. Vorkin's gaze shifted from Rallick toward the crowded terrace. She said, Councilman Turban Orr possessed protective magic, yet it availed him not. Curious. She seemed to be considering something, then she nodded and said, Your skills are required, Rallick Nom. Accompany me. He blinked, then, as she strode toward the garden at the rear of the house, he followed. In the garden, Crocus held one hand over Chalice's mouth as he lay atop her. With his other, he removed his thief's mask. Her eyes widened in recognition. In a harsh voice, he said, If you scream, you'll regret it. He'd managed to drag her perhaps 10 yards into the undergrowth before she tripped him. Following a bout of thrashing about, he'd won the battle. Crocus said, I just want to talk to you. I won't hurt you, Chalice, I swear it. Unless you try something, of course. Now I'm going to remove my hand. Please don't scream. He tried to read the expression in her eyes, but all he saw was fear. Ashamed, he removed his hand from her mouth. She didn't scream, but a moment later, Crocus found himself wishing she had. Chalice said, Damn you, thief. When my father catches you, he'll have you skinned alive. That's if Gorliss doesn't find you first. You try anything with me, and he'll have you boiled, slowly. Crocus jammed his hand over her mouth again. He thought, skinned? Boiled? Then demanded, Who's Gorliss? Some amateur chef? So you did betray me. She stared up at him. He lifted his hand again. Chalice said, I didn't betray you. What are you talking about? Crocus said, That murdered house guard. I never did it, but... She said, Of course you didn't. Father hired a seer. A woman killed that guard, a servant of the ropes. The seer was terrified and didn't even stay to be paid. Now get off me, thief. That says a lot if the seer had to get out of there before getting paid.
Right? Well, just gets so scared, just runs her out of there. It's like, I'm out.
Yeah. She'll send the invoice later.
Yeah.
Crocus let her go and sat back on the ground. He stared into the trees and said, You didn't betray me? What about Mies? The guards at Uncle Mammoth's? The big hunt? Chalice climbed to her feet and brushed dead leaves from her hide cloak. She asked, What are you babbling about? I have to get back. Gorliss will be looking for me. He's the first son of House Tholius, in training to be a master duelist. If he sees you with me, there'll be real trouble. Training to be a master duelist, not training to be an honorable council member. Sounds a bit like Turban Orr, doesn't it?
Right. I sense another hothead. Worried about dueling instead of politics.
Mm-hmm.
Well, maybe if we dueled, maybe if our guys dueled,
They
it'd
used
be a little
to
more interesting. I
back
know
in the
they did.
day.
I
There's that
know.
story where Abraham Lincoln used to talk smack bad about people before he was a president. I think he was a
Right.
lawyer at the time, right?
Yeah.
And the one guy called him out for a duel. Abraham Lincoln did not want to duel this guy. They go out to the duel, and I forget how the situation got diffused, but that was the last time he ever talked smack about anybody. After that, he
Okay.
changed his ways. He got called on the carpet. Maybe that was all it took.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I started jujitsu last November, and
Okay.
all these people that you see online that really get in people's faces or start talking smack, if they ever got into an actual physical altercation where they were dealing with somebody like actively choking them or something like that, like you have to deal with in
Mhm.
jujitsu, I feel like a lot less people would talk smack. Because
Yeah,
you
right.
wouldn't understand the repercussions of what would happen if somebody stronger or more trained than you is a little bit unhinged and has no restraint.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
until you have that realization that, man, there's people out there that could really mess me up.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
people just do stupid stuff, man. I tell you.
Yeah, they do. That's why, yeah, I try my best to just keep my mouth shut and smile. I'm usually pretty, you know me. I'm friendly until I've been pushed too far.
Yeah. What I realized, I'm a pretty large guy. I'm like 6 feet tall. You know, I weigh over 200
Mhm.
pounds and, you know, I'm pretty lean. So I always thought I could handle myself physically. But my first week there, somebody that was probably like 40 pounds lighter than me, he was a brown belt. So like really experienced. I mean, put the
Mhm.
fear on me. You know, I didn't go in there thinking I knew I didn't know anything. Right. But just
Right.
experiencing what that level of experience brought to the table, I mean, it was really eye opening. I was like, man, I
Mm.
really need to get a lot better at this. But also, kind of what I was talking about earlier, it's like you never know what anybody out there is capable of. So you just need to
That's right.
chill. Just
That's
chill.
right.
Do not start anything.
Now, yeah, don't start stuff. Don't start mess.
Not
Don't
that
run
I
your
ever was one.
mouth.
I've always been pretty passive, but I mean,
No.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I think a lot of people could benefit from that realization.
Yes. Yes. Most people
Yeah.
can use that realization.
Crocus looked up at Chalice blankly. He said, "Wait," and sprang to his feet and said, "Listen, Chalice, forget this goreless idiot. Within the year, my uncle will introduce us formally. Mammoth is a famous writer." Chalice rolled her eyes. "Get your feet back on the ground. A writer, some old man with ink-stained hands who walks into walls, has his house power, influence. House Tholius has power, influence, everything required. Besides, Gorless loves me." Sounds like Gorless has a blue check mark on Instagram in today's terms. He has influence.
Influence. I love the afterthought there. Oh, and and he loves me too.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out.
Right. Wah, wah, wah. I'm sorry.
Crocus said, He stopped and looked away. He thought, did he love her? No. Did that matter, though? What did he want from her anyway? As if reading his thoughts, she demanded, what do you want from me anyway? Crocus studied his feet. Then he met her eyes. He said, company, friendship? What am I saying? I'm a thief. I rob women like you. She snapped, that's right. So why pretend otherwise? Her expression softened. Then she said, Crocus, I won't betray you. It will be our secret. For the briefest of moments, he felt like a child being stroked by and consoled by a kindly matron, and he found himself enjoying it.
At least she remembered his name.
She smiled and said, before you, I'd never met a real thief from the streets. His enjoyment ended in a surge of anger. He sneered, hood's breath? No. Real? You don't know what's real, Chalice. You've never had blood on your hands. You've never seen a man die. But that's the way it should be, isn't it? Leave the dirt to us. We're used to it.
I'm so sorry, dude. It needs to be said with the South Park Canadian accent.
Leave the dirt to us.
We're used to it. Eh? We're used to it, buddy.
I'm not your buddy, pal.
We're used to it, I'm not your guy, friend.
Chalice quietly said, I saw a man die tonight. I never want to again. If that's what real means, then I don't want it. It's all yours, Crocus. Goodbye. She turned and walked away. Crocus stared at her back as her words rang in his head. Suddenly exhausted, he turned to the garden. He hoped Apsalar had remained where he'd left her. The last thing he wanted now was to have to track her down. He slipped into the shadows.
Nice.
Mallet recoiled with his first step into the glade. Perrin gripped his arm and their eyes met. Mallet shook his head and said, "I'll not approach any closer, sir. Whatever lies there is anathema to my Denul Warren, and it senses me with hunger." Mallet wiped sweat from his brow, drew a shaky breath, and said, "Best bring the girl to me here." Perrin released Mallet's arm and darted into the clearing. He saw the block of wood was now the size of a table, covered in thick, twisting roots and pocked on its sides with rough, squared holes. The earth around it appeared to be soaked in blood. That's ominous.
Nothing to see here, sir. Just a little blood.
Perrin whispered, "Corporal, send the girl over to Mallet." Kalam laid a hand on Apsalar's shoulder and said, "It's all right, lass. You go on now. We'll join you shortly." She smiled and said yes, then moved to where Mallet stood at the glade's edge. Kalam rubbed his bristly jaw. When Perrin arrived, he said, "Never seen Sari smile before, and that's a shame." They stood and watched as Mallet spoke quietly to the girl, then stepped forward and laid a hand on her forehead. Kalam cocked his head, then said, "The storm stopped. Yeah, hope it means what we'd like it to mean." Perrin said, "Someone stopped it. I share your hope, Corporal." For Perrin, however, it was a small hope, for he could tell something was building. Perrin sighed. "It's not even the 12th bell yet. Hard to believe." Kalam said, "Long night ahead of us." Mallet had voiced an amazed cry that reached them. The healer drew back his hand and waved at Perrin and Kalam. Kalam told Perrin to go to Mallet. Perrin frowned at Kalam, confused. He went over to where Mallet and Sari waited. Her eyes were closed, and she seemed in a trance. Mallet said, "The possession's gone." Perrin replied, "Guessed as much," and eyed the girl. Mallet continued, "There's more to it, though. She's got someone else inside her, sir." Perrin's brows rose. Mallet went on, "Someone who was there all along. How it survived the rope's presence is beyond me, and now I've got a choice." This presence he's referring to is Rigga. It's taken us all the way back to the beginning of the book. Perrin said, "Explain." Mallet crouched, found a twig, and began to scratch patterns in the dirt. He said, "That someone's been protecting the girl's mind, acting like an alchemist's filter. In the last 2 years, Sari's done things that would drive her insane if she'd remembered any of it. That presence is fighting those memories right now, but it needs help, because it isn't as strong as it once was. It's dying." Perrin squatted beside Mallet and asked, "You're thinking of offering that help, then?" Mallet said, "Not sure. You see, sir, I don't know its plans. Don't know what it's up to. Can't read the pattern it's trying to make. So let's say I help it. Only what it wants is absolute control. Then the girl's possessed all over again." Perrin asked, "So you think the presence was protecting Sari from the rope, only so it could now jump in and take over?" Mallet said, "Put it that way and it doesn't make sense. What gets me, though, is why else would that presence commit itself so thoroughly? Its body, its flesh is gone. If it lets go of the girl, it's got nowhere to go, sir. Now maybe it's a loved one, a relative or something like that. A person who was willing to sacrifice herself absolutely. That's a possibility." Perrin asked, "Herself? It's a woman?" Mallet said it was. "Damned if I know what it is now. All I get from it is sadness." Mallet looked into Perrin's eyes and said, "It's the saddest thing I've ever known, sir." Perrin studied Mallet's face briefly, then he rose and said, "I'm not going to give you an order on what to do, healer." Mallet asked, "But?" Perrin said, "But for what it's worth, I say do it. Give it what it needs so it can do what it wants to do." Mallet puffed out his cheeks, then tossed down the twig and straightened. He said, "My instinct too, sir. Thanks." I'm impressed with the way Perrin handled this situation. Instead of giving Mallet an order, he gave him guidance.
Yeah, and again, this is what I was referring to earlier. How much I've enjoyed Perrin through this read through is just he's he's not nearly as shallow as I saw him. He's just not in it as much as I think he is, and I read over him quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I think is part of it, and so I've really enjoyed him a lot in this
Yes.
series, especially like his growth has been something very. It's I like it. I guess he's our hero for the hero's journey in this story. He's kind of our foot on the ground for the young guy caught unawares and know what's going on.
Agreed. Crocus hasn't done much to fill that
Yeah.
role. He's a boy lost
high
who's
school.
lost the whole book.
Yeah.
Kalam spoke loudly from the glade. He said, Far enough. Show yourselves. Perrin and Mallet spun around to see Kalam looking into the woods to their left. Perrin grasped Mallet's arm and pulled him into the shadows. Mallet dragged Sari with them. 2 figures entered the glade, a woman and a man. We're going to end our coverage of the chapter here for now, and we'll continue next week.
Yes. Really good, exciting chapter, though. Such a good chapter.
Yeah, the whole chapter is great. There was a lot of stuff that happened in this first half, even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
For standout moments, the description of Ray's ongoing battle with the dragons was really cool. There's some really interesting imagery there, and the damage that he inflicted on them was pretty heavy.
Yeah, very heavy. To be able to swat her to the ground like that. That's kind of how I imagine him just kind of battering a very powerful entity to the ground like that requires a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very, very impressive.
Kruppa trapping Raced in his dream and teaming up with Tool to take him out. That was impressive as well.
Yes, absolutely hilarious. And it's real funny too. I mean, of course, until Race gets away, it's pretty funny because he can't take Kruppa.
Yeah. Kruppa saying he bows to no man or God. Love it.
Fantastic.
Just that's the kind of stuff that gets me. Unbreakable.
Yeah.
It's great.
Absolutely unbreakable.
Apsalar subduing Kalam. Really impressive. Just the speed with which he is an animal. And for her to be able to get up on him like that, especially when he had the jump on her, just really.
He's coming from behind, right?
Yes.
It's like, so she pops him in the chest, turns around and kicks him in the nuts, and you're like, ooh.
Yep.
Didn't see that coming.
Dropped him like a sack of potatoes.
Yeah.
Kalam's reaction to her saying they must have been old friends, that was gold.
Yes. And thank you for thank you for giving and clearing that up for me there too. I appreciate that.
Oh, which part?
About the cotillion.
Oh.
About memories from cotillion. No, that would be her disjointed memories of her serving as Sari kind of.
Mm-hmm. Vorkin's sudden appearance. She's so cool.
She's cool. Is she cool like clown hat, curly hair, smiley face?
South Park reference, yes.
Oh.
Yeah. And it was nice for Crocus to get some closure on his ill thought out plan in regards to Chalice.
Oh, agreed. We can finally be done with the Chalice arc.
Mallet and Perrin's interaction in regards to what to do with Rigga's presence in Apsalar's mind. We just covered this, but I liked Perrin's guidance to Mallet.
Yes, very much so. Just again, part of this shows his growth and him warming up and not being, he's one of the gang. He's now one of the gang.
Mm-hmm.
And he's now accepted as their captain. But he's still one of the gang too.
Yeah. Even though Whiskey Jack technically is still the higher rank in terms of who they look up to, they are starting to respect Perrin's opinion.
Yes, very much.
Cool. All right. Did you have any final thoughts before we sign off on this?
No, just really great episode, man. This is this part of this chapter and this chapter and the following chapter are just all gold.
Yes.
Craziness. It's all craziness.
Yeah. The next half of the chapter is just nonstop wildness.
Yes. Yeah. We look forward to covering that next week.
Yes. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Yes, thank you. Good night.
We thank you all for joining us today.
Again, we'd really like to thank you for taking the time to be with us, and we've had a really great time talking about the topic today.
If you would like to support our show, you can find us at HorseFrogProductions.com, where you can find our Patreon link. Depending on the platform you're listening from, it may also be in the episode description.
And if you'd like to contact us through email, it's at contact@horsefrogproductions.com.